Okay, we're going to look at scenario 7 for this for the King's Indian attack here. Um don't let's not worry about that right now. Okay, so we're again looking at the E4 variation of the King's Indian attack. And against this, there are two different scenarios that you can run into if your opponent plays a Sicilian defense. Last time we were looking at the French version of the King's Indian attack, where it's the likely scenario that would happen if your opponent played the French defense, and then you would proceed to build up your King's Indian attack through that. And if your opponent plays the Sicilian, you can play d3 to again transpose this into the French version of the King's Indian attack. But what happens if your opponent is very adamant about this new variation of King's Indian attack that very few people have seen, and this is the Sicilian variation proper of King's Indian attack that we're gonna look at here. It usually goes to knight to f3. I don't recommend knight to f3 because you probably should play d3 to you will show your cards right away if you do that, but at the same time, you're going to run into a whole slew of other problems, as you will see here. One of the ways this can go is that your opponent will try to play something like a knight off. That is one scenario that you're gonna run into. What happens if your opponent plays a con variation, right? Against this, your next move can be d3. If your opponent plays if your opponent plays d6, do not play d3. This will run into a whole slew of traps with bishops and what have you. It's not fun. But it can be d3 in this case because the bishop is blocked completely. Against this, your opponent will very likely play knight to c6, and then you immediately fianchetto, and then he will try to fianchetto for some reason, which is really weird. And then bishop g2, and then he'll go here for some reason. And then after castles, he'll go bishop g7. Yeah, this is one of the Sicilian variations that you're going to run into in the King's Indian attack. But this is not the most common Sicilian variations. One of the telltale signs that this is a Sicilian variation is that, again, the knight will be here and not here. Because usually the bishop will be here and the knight will usually be here. The knight will usually be here. And the bishop will usually be here. And then it'll be no. It'll usually be here, and that your opponent will play oh, come on. Your opponent will play the bishop here, and then the knight will usually go here. And then he'll usually go here, and then maybe this pawn can either be here or here. But the positions between the knight and the bishop are flipped, which is a telltale sign that this is a Sicilian version of the King's Indian attack. So your only move is this weird looking c3. You don't normally play this move, but against the Sicilian variations, you will have to play this a lot. The reason why you have to play this is because of this bishop right here. That bishop will eye down that diagonal. Nope, sorry. That bishop will eye down that diagonal. And as long as that bishop eyes down that diagonal, you try to do anything with the pieces over here, you're just gonna get blown apart. And this is why you need to play this to prevent the bishop from getting through here. Sorry. And then he'll go d5. Your next move is this weird looking queen to e2, and then he'll castle e5. Remember this e5. Queen to c7 is the most popular move from here. And against this, you're probably looking at like bishop to f4 to protect that pawn a little more. You have 3 defenders of this pawn. So he'll probably go b5. Again, this is just like what we remember from the bayonet defense that we saw in scenario 1. This is going to come up an awful lot. Against this, you have to play a3 just to defend this side a little bit. A little heads up to note here though. If your opponent plays the Sicilian variation of the King's Indian attack, well, this isn't nearly as bad, but if your opponent plays like the Sicilian variation of the King's Indian attack, like proper, which we're going to look into in just a little bit, as soon as he plays that, you're going to be in big trouble, because that, like, as soon as that happens, the problem you're going to run into is that it's going to get really, really position and grindy. And when you're a King's Indian attack player, you definitely don't want that. But the Sicilian variation, especially at top levels, is a very popular way to neutralize the King's Indian attack, especially for those who are unprepared. And you will have to learn how to play positional chess just for this. But that is how the cookie crumbles sometimes. So against this, where he tries to play the Najdorf, your only move is to Fianchetto right away. Notice that if you don't do that, these knights and bishops will gobble up. These knights and bishop will like gobble up your entire position before you even get your setup. And once you look at the rest of the moves, you're going to be like really shocked, because Black's setup is going to look completely otherworldly. And this is one of the reasons why this is probably one of the very few exceptions where the King's Indian attack that you should be playing is going to end up a little position. Normally, King's Indian attack is not position at all. Normally, King's Indian attack is not really positional at all. You're trying to launch an all or nothing counterattack against, all or nothing attack in this case. You're trying to launch an all or nothing attack against the Black King, and you're bringing all your pieces into the King side, and you're just putting the foot on the gas, and that is why you're playing the King's Indian attack. But again, the Sicilian variation is, which the proper version, and we're going to look at in just a bit, is one of the ways they can neutralize your King's Indian attack, and now you're gonna have to play it positionally, and it's going to suck. And his most popular move from here is knight to c6, and yeah, it's gonna get like super positional from here. Bishop g2, knight to f6 is the next move. He technically could play here and here, but if he goes for this, he's not gonna play this. Not very likely anyway, because like that gives you an extra free move. You play your d3. You do get your King's Indian attack set up, but that's as big of a celebration you can possibly get, because It's gonna get nightmarish pretty soon. You're going to be surprised that he'll very likely fianchetto, which is very unusual. But you want a castle right away. And against this, he'll fianchetto and he'll prepare to castle. Again, that fianchetto is going to really, really crush you. Again, remember this. Because of this, you again have to play c3 to stop it. And then that'll buy him time to castle. And then you have to go rook e1 because you need support for that pawn. Because the knight, you technically could support it with the knight, but it's not a long-term support that you're gonna get from it. If it's not a long-term support you're gonna get from it. Like, I've seen some people do this. That's a mistake because he can just take you, and then he'll push you here, and you're screwed. Like, you could try to go here to stop it, but then he can still push you, and then okay, maybe that's not a good idea, but then and then the queen's gonna fall off the board. You don't want that. You don't want that. You don't want that. You don't want that. So you have to go rook e1. And then that'll buy him enough time to stop you from playing e5. And they'll be able to play e5 themselves. This is very much like a Stonewall structure. You will never see this in a normal King's Indian attack setup. You will never see this. And against this, your only move is h3, and then your opponent will play this weird move. Yeah, this is what you're up against now. This is what you're up against now. And good luck trying to survive this. And now you have to play bishop e3, which is super weird to play. His next move is rook c8. And then you have to play a3 to stop your opponent from attacking on the... Actually, you're doing that to attack b4. Now you have to attack on the queen side yourself. He plays h6. You have to play d4. Takes. d5. Takes. Knight takes e4. Knight b to d2. Queen e7. I'm telling you, this is really weird how I'm gonna play this. Now I have to play queen e2 just to like defend your bishop. But obviously your opponent can't take because you have queen takes e2. And then after that trade, his only option is gonna be like king to h7. So against this, his only try is rook f to e8. Notice that both you guys are preparing up a battery here. Now I have to get rook ac1, get the queenside rook back into the fray. Against this, your opponent has b6. Notice that both players are playing super hesitant, and you have to try to quietly improve your position, like bit by bit. It's getting super annoying having to play this. You finally play b4, restricting the knight, but then you have queen to d. But then your opponent will play queen to d7. You have g4. You got to restrict that bishop, but your opponent has g5. b5 to attack the knight. But now your knight but now the knight can just take your pawn. Takes. But at least you have to take this knight, which then translates to taking this. And then after this, your opponent has to play like bishop b8. You at least have queen to d3. That forms a battery against this. So now your opponent's king is pretty much stuck. And this is why your opponent has to like trade here. And then I'll try to trade here. Rook takes. And then I'll play here, and then I'll play here, which then leads to takes. Oh, now it's a bishop and pawn endgame. Good luck playing that. And this is the one reason why sometimes this is the one reason why lots of people will argue that the King's Indian attack is like positional. It's not actually positional, but in this case it does get pretty positional. If your opponent knows how to like really neutralize your King's Indian attack like this, it does get pretty positional. So you do have to be a little careful. But by the way, in scenario 8, we're going to be looking at this exact game. We're going to revisit this. Let's delete that. I had to play b4, restriction knight. Queen to d7 again, just like we talked about. Rook e d1. I don't know if this was... no, that was a move. I think it was g4. Yeah, I think it was g4. Then he played g5. And then b5. And then he took, and then you... and then he took, and then you took, and then you took, and then he took. And then you got to take this, and you got to take this. And then he went here, and then he went here. And then I went queen to d3, and then this came off the board, and then this came off the board. Bishop to d6 it was. And rook c6. And then he took, right? No. Rook c6. No, that wasn't it. a4, yeah, it was a4, and then he took. Yeah, he took. Rook to d. And then he went here, and then you took, and you took. It was more along the lines of this. Bishop d5. Okay, there we go. Okay, it was more along the line. It was more or less the lines of this. What we're going to do is we're going to take this exact game. We're going to come back to this game in scenario 8. And then in scenario 8, we're going to look at what happens when it goes into this endgame. And we're going to study this endgame. Alright, have fun. Let's look at scenario 7 now, which is going to be the... Wait, what? Oh yeah, this is the next scenario that we're looking into, right? Yeah. Okay. In this final scenario right here... No, wait. No. Actually, the next scenario we're going to look into is the Caro-Kann. And then after the Caro-Kann, we're going to come back to this game. And then we're going to study the endgame portion of this. And then see what happens see what would happen if we had to fight an endgame like this. Okay, have fun!